Well, Rosemary, first off, thank you so much for taking time for us to connect. I know you said you were just coming here for a board retreat, and now we're together.
Yeah.
We met now about 14 years ago, and the idea was to just get connected to a community. And I think you've been not only a role model for what community-centered work looks like, but I thought it would be really exciting for us to have a conversation as we talk about as the future's getting more digitized, what it is to be more human today. You have this fascinating thesis of when you put community first, the world can move as fast as it's moving, but the community, primero, community first. So share with us a little bit more about what has been your inspiration on not only coming to that conclusion, but the work that you get to do today in service of community.
Wow. Well, Aguila started, I actually was trained to work in government, but it goes too slow for me. Children need our help now. We can't wait. And when you look at the statistics and how they're performing in school, COVID threw a nice big wrench in their lives. It is critical. It's beyond just let's give them attention. It's critical. It's for their future, but it's not just for their future. It's for our future. You think about it. Who's going to take care of us? You want an educated nurse, you want an educated doctor, you want them to be able to take care of you. We're also at a critical point where we don't have enough doctors. I live in New Mexico. There's a shortage of doctors. I've lost 3 primary care doctors in only 5 years. They've moved. It's unbelievable. So it's important that we look at community, the community needs, and how we can grow those people who can serve community.
Yeah, and Rosemary, one of the ways that you're doing that, and you've been not only embedded in this work, but you're passionate about this work, and a reflection of that is Aguila Youth Leadership Institute. Can you share with us a little bit more about what the organization is, what the impact that it's made, and what your vision of it is in this 21st century?
Well, I've always loved working with youth, particularly teenagers. People might think I'm crazy, but they are absolutely wonderful to work with. When I was working on my PhD, my research focused on youth and violence, juvenile justice policy. So I was supposed to go into research, and I did a lot of research, specifically working with Latino male gang members. I'd go into the prisons. My mom would freak out. She's in the federal prison today. And the big steel doors would slam. And I got to interview the OGs, the old gang members. I interviewed young ones. And it was when I was with the young gang members. And they would leave me in the library with about 30 of these young men who were incarcerated. No guards, nothing. But we developed a rapport. I would talk to them, and as a human, their needs, what they did, what they aspired to. And they were wonderful. A new one would come in and start acting, up, and I would have their respect, and they would say, "Hey, don't you talk like that. Show her some respect." I would go into the parks at night talking to gang members. My mother was so upset. And no, I gained their respect because I cared about them. And that's when I thought, you know what? These are bright young men, and I'm not going to be behind a desk. I'm going to be out there, serving them and helping them to ensure that they have a good life. And that's where it all started. And that's where Aguila Youth started. And we are a gang, just like the Boy Scouts, just like the Girl Scouts. We are a gang of good. We want to change the world. We want to create a better place. And I'm telling you, I've had some students come into Aguila who have been in gangs or close to being in gangs, and we've transformed their lives. They're engineers, they're nurses, they have it. We just need to believe in them. And so what I started out doing, what I thought would be a year or two, has turned into 20 years this year of helping these youth. And it has been my privilege to witness that transformation.
Rosemary, share with us a little bit more about what has been your transformation on this journey, right? So it seems that you went into doing this work with a certain idea of understanding the journey of these young men. But like you said, you've had now 20 years of doing this work. What have been some transformational moments or insights that now you have now and that you want to share with either the leaders that are listening to this conversation today or the next generation of leaders as well?
Well, some people might not like to hear it, but so I worked in government, I worked in academia, and as I said, the wheels turn too slow. It's very incremental, and children need help now. Families need help now. I mean, in Aguila, we've served families, all of their children, and all of their children have done well. Right? But insights, wow. Well, our educational system needs a lot of help. We have teachers who are leaving the system because the system, quite frankly, keeps them from really seeing the potential of these children. For example, one of the things we do is we have sessions where we have college prep sessions. We give them information. We're lecturing to them, right? That's no fun. So this last session we had the summit. It's like a youth town hall. And I told the staff, we're not going to do any lecturing. We're not going to bring up any, college prep. We're going to save that. Let's do this and give them their voice. Let's hear them from here and here. Let's hear what they have to say. And so I broke them up into groups after we did their colors, their true colors, and gave them some questions. What are the issues of the day? What problems do we have in our society, in our country, in the world? What are your ideas for solutions? What can we do? Oh my gosh, it was amazing to hear a ninth grader talk about the economy, the impact on the GDP, and I'm like, wow. And talking about what's going on in the world in terms of what's happening in Gaza and children that are dying. They are very much in tune with what's going on. So this was an experience for them to be able to speak their mind. And too often, we don't give them that opportunity. Beyond that, we then said, at the end of the day, when we put them through all these activities and their discussions between each other, then we said, let's reflect. And we're going to do a living museum, right? The reflection was on white T-shirts with markers, fabric markers. They're beautiful, and they're very much a part of what they spoke of in terms of what needs to be done, solutions, listen to youth voice. They have a lot of things to say. And from that, I told them, this is a preview of what you will do in your summer symposium. That's the 3-night, 4-day stay at the university. And it's all going to be about them. We do college prep all year long, but this is about them, about discovering themselves, about a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. Because Cesar Chavez said, we need to educate children in their minds and in their hearts, right? So we need to practice kindness. and concern for our community. And they're ready. They're really ready. But if we're not giving them that opportunity and we're saying, oh, children just need to have a third grade reading level, that's what we need to do. Focus on getting them to get a third grade reading level. No, if you do that, then you're just saying, you can stop there. It's not, that's your stopping point. No, 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 no. We need to say to each other, children need to read at grade level, every grade level, right? Because too many children will be promoted from 8th grade to high school with a third grade reading level. They try out freshman year and then they can't keep up. They feel a low self-esteem. They're not worthy. They can't keep up with their colleagues, so they will drop out. That's summer. That's the biggest dropout
Statistically,
statistically,
around the country.
Statistically, between their freshman and sophomore year. And the problem too is that, Arizona doesn't rank the highest in a lot of things, but it does rank pretty high up there in student to counselor ratio. At one point, it was 900 students to one counselor. How do you deal with it? Yeah. You're going to deal with behavior issues, right. And you're going to think, well, that kid's doing really great, so I don't need to pay attention to them. If you're a real quiet and shy student, but you're brilliant, you're going to fall right through the cracks because you're not needing the attention. So in Aguila, what I always tell my students is go, make good friends with your counselor, talk to your counselor, ask for recommendations, and send a thank you note. But, be considerate.
And Rosemary, if I'm not mistaken, Aguila even has a counselor or two always ready there to be of service to the students, correct? Absolutely. And Rosemary, one of the things too that I personally have been inspired about the work, and I think you're highlighting to some of these things, so correct me if I'm wrong here. One of the things I think we both recognize is that, yes, our education community needs some support, needs some help, needs some transformation. With that said, I think organizations like Aguila have been so successful because it doesn't feel like y'all have those boundary conditions that sometimes our education systems have been built around. And one of the things that I learned working with y'all was, I remember coming back from Oakland several years ago, and I told you about this idea of pathways. And then within a month you said, all right, Eric, let's do this in Aguila. And we were able to implement pathways in the program, just like that.
I remember that.
But it shows the flexibility, I think, that an organization like you, because you said, hey, how do I put the community first? How do I put the students first? If this could be of service to students, let's figure it out. Right. Can you share with us a little bit more about, because of what you've learned from academia and from education, that yeah, sometimes the flexibility might not be there, but how can organizations like Aguila that can be nimble at times be a role model for not only other organizations to lean on, but even maybe our education system to lean on, to be a little bit more nimble in the work that they are able to do to serve students?
Well, it's because we're democratic. And that's because everybody on our staff are considered. Their ideas, their passion, everything's considered. So I remember that conversation with you when Professor Galleros at ASU Law School started the law program, and you said to me, I remember, I will never forget, Rosemary, not everybody wants to be a lawyer. Excuse me. And I looked at you and said, really? You think so? And then you said, why don't we think about other areas? And pathways, as you know, is the analogy I give the kids is, look, whenever you go into the water, be it the lake, the river, the ocean, oh, heck, even the shower, right, the pool, you're going to dip your toes in, you're going to feel the water, see how the temperature is, right? Before you dive in. Excuse me. And then I said, education is the same. So before you decide where you're going to go to college, what you're going to study, what you want to be, You want to dip your toe, you dip your mind and dip your heart and figure out, is this what I want to do? You know, I had a young woman who went into the law pathways, and she's at Fordham. She's on a full ride, and I love the law program, Mrs. H. Not what I want to do, but it taught me critical thinking skills, how to research, how to speak, how to present. So there's other skills in there, right? So we have, because of you, we have the law program still. We have STEM. We have business/entrepreneurship. We have health, and that incorporates all the different health areas from neurosurgeons to nurses to radiologists. And then we have the humanities/liberal arts. That's where everything falls into education, psychology, history, whatever. I tell the kids, whatever melts your butter, whatever it is you want to do, but you have to commit to that for a year. So preferably doing that from freshman year in high school, you can explore these different pathways. And within each pathway, there's things that they get to do and really make that area of study come to life and make sense, connecting the dots, and then deciding, I like this, but that isn't really what I want to do, but I've learned from this, right? So, I mean, in the health pathways, Dr. Mandy Oladine, she's a pediatrician, she says, Rosemary, can you order me some suture kits? No problem. Suture kits right there. And the kids they're suturing and they're loving it. There's a surgeon that came in to work with them on suturing. I mean, so we do that to make it real so that when they get to college, they know what they want to do. They're focused and they're strong. They feel confident. So it's an awesome thing to see.
No, I love how that one idea, that conversation has evolved into these wonderful efforts and bringing professionals into the lives of these students that to this day, some of us are still connected with them. I mean, I still get pinged on LinkedIn every once in a while from a student saying, Mr. Rodriguez, I remember when you spoke to me when I was a sophomore and you told me a little bit more about STEM fields, and now I'm doing this. And so you never know that one connection that you might have with a student, that one story, that one insight that might spark some inspiration for them.
In the educational system, like government, there's protocol. And there's a lot of businesses as well, is that if you have an idea, you have to take it up the chain, and it has to be approved by here and it has to be approved by there. It could take years to implement something like that. But we had a conversation and boom, we made it happen, and it is wonderful. So that's like our oral history project. We talk to students about, we want you to understand where you come from, because you can swab all day for your DNA, but you don't have the stories of your family's challenges, their triumphs, and where you come from. Where do those ideas come from? Where is it? And I remember I had a student who said, I didn't want to do it, Mrs. H. I didn't want to do it. Showed up to my grandparents' house, and I saw my grandfather there. He had a little bow tie, and he smiling, and he smelled like Old Spice. And my grandmother was cooking breakfast, and so we started. And I give them questions, conversation starters, and he started asking questions. And he said, I realized, wow, my grandparents really, they sacrificed so much for me, and I shouldn't take that for granted. We just kept talking, and the stories kept coming, and I was writing quick, and I had it recorded as well. And then he says, then it was lunchtime. Then my grandmother was cooking some lunch for us. We sat all together, and then my grandmother, she starts chiming in with her stories too, and it was wonderful. He says, it was great. We continued and continued. He says, this is 8. Then it was dinner. I spent the whole day with them. And then I had to leave because I had school the next day. He said, and he got teary-eyed, and he hugged me, and he goes, we're not done. I thought, that was Dr. Christine Marin at ASU, that was what the rubric she put together for us. That was our idea, the oral history project. And students love it. And I asked them, how does it make you feel when you're doing that? And they're so powerful. And that's a connection not just to their parents, but to communities where they come from, right? And then it makes them feel that sense of pride and wanting to do well in school and being successful and giving back, because that's what it's about. Well, we decided another idea. I have to tell you that I've watched this old movie called The Trouble with Angels, and it's an old actress, Haley Mills. She's an English actress, and she's in this girls' school. It's a convent with nuns, and she would always get in trouble because she'd had this scathingly brilliant idea. And so she'd always get in trouble for something, right? But my staff, I'll say, oh, I've got a scathingly brilliant idea. And they'll just like give me the cross and say, no, wait. And I said, I have a scathingly brilliant. We're going to expand the oral history project to storytelling, because storytelling will not only give them a sense of confidence and their self-esteem, but it helps them with research and writing and interviewing. So we are getting ready to expand it with South Mountain Community College's Storytelling Institute. And we're going to pair students with veterans, and they're going to capture their stories. And we're going to honor veterans on this November, Veterans Day, with students performing the stories with the veteran they've been paired with. So what does that do? It gives the students a sense of belonging, confidence, and pride in that they're telling the story of someone they've spoken to, and they're learning about the veteran. But it's going to be a community event. So the community will come and celebrate these veterans who are being honored through the stories that are performed by these young people. It's just going to, I'm so excited about you. I can't tell you, I'm so excited.
And Rosemary, I think one of the examples you're giving us too is, you hinted to us that sometimes the flexibility that an organization like Aguila has is because it starts with the community first, versus going up the ranks, figuring it out, and then bringing it back down. That sometimes when this idea starts off, it could get diminished when it goes up, and then it could look very different when it comes back down. Yeah. With that said, with that said too, I think the organization of Aguila is a testament to how the future is being built around even how technology could be rightfully deployed. Sometimes we think, because it works great in Phoenix, this technology deployment, it's going to work fantastic in Navajo Nation, and therefore it's going to work fantastic in Costa Rica. And that's not always the case, right? Because that's a very tops-down approach. And I think you're role modeling, or the organization is role modeling, that when you start with the community first and you listen to the community and you understand the community, you can implement better solutions, better programs, better ways of impacting them. Could be sometimes through technology, could be sometimes through different methods. Could be that the students for this particular effort will use technology to connect with the veteran and find new ways of creating stories. So I think you're also showing that flexibility sometimes starts from within the community itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is community, and it begins for us in Aguila. The staff have to have a sense of community. So the one thing that they know about me in working in our program is that I believe, and I will say it over and over, and they know it, is family first. Where they're, in other organizations or in other government or whatever, you can't take off when your child is sick. I always tell them, family first, family first. My mom needs some help. Family first, family first. We'll get to that. Don't worry, family first. I'll take it on. And so what we see in staff is, don't worry about it, I'll take it. Don't worry about it, I'll cover that class. You go ahead and do it. we take care of each other, and that's what we mirror in the community. So it's that mindset we've developed within our organization that we mirror in the community, that we're there to help you. We understand you can't make a session today because your daughter's feeling sick, but you're welcome to come to the parent session and pick up all the information, whatever it is. Oh, you guys are so great. I had another, and I know you know them because it's Santiago's mother, and so she came to me because she's also taking care of her grandchildren, and she's the guardian, and her daughter applied to Wellesley early decision without any advice from us. She just thought it would be great, and she did it. And I said, well, that's like a contract, right? And so so her grandmother says, it's $20,000 a year. I can't afford $20,000 a year. I said, did you tell them that's your grandmother? Did you tell them that you're going to be 18 and you're going to be independent and you don't have any income? No. Okay. So I called my contact at Wellesley, because the one thing that my father taught me when he would pull out his wallet, it was so fat, had no money, but it had a lot of cards. That networking is so important. And so I called my contact at Wellesley. I said, hey, Katie, and let me tell you about this student, and she's brilliant and she's wonderful, but she's gonna be independent, and it's 20,000. What? She didn't say that? And I could hear her, adding everything up. She said, oh no, she brought it down to 5,000 right there, that in my office right there. And it's that kind of attention our children need, or another young man who brought his mother in. She didn't speak any English. He came in and he had a rosary around his neck. He's like, oh, he's talking to her in Spanish. Oh, Mom, please, I want to go to Loris. I want to go to Loris College in Dubuque, Iowa, a small Catholic private school for sports medicine. Well, he got into NAU, which NAU is a good school, but he says it's going to be $5,000 a year, and Mom and Dad don't make a lot of money. And so I said, okay, I'll be back. Let me talk to Loris, because in a private institution, I can make deals. So I called up Sharon over at Loris. She was director of admissions, and I said, you really can have Luis, but we need $5,000. He's been accepted somewhere else, and we really need this, family doesn't make a lot. And she says, okay. I said, okay, what? She goes, okay, he's got it. I said, you're kidding, from where? She says, don't you worry, Mrs. H. We've got him covered. Just send him to us. And so he went to Loris in the full ride. It's developing those connections, helping people to understand the situation in the family, and it's building the trust from the family that's in the community, that I'm here to help you. I really want to help you.
And that takes time, right? Sometimes as this world is moving as fast as it's moving, one of my good friends, Sterling Hawking, says that the slowest rate of change you're ever going to feel is today, right? So there is sometimes the sense of like, if I don't do this, or if I don't do that, I'm just going to be left behind. But what your work has been doing has been saying, hey, take the time. Like, that's the premium. Take the time to get to know your community. Take the time to understand the people you serve, because that's what's going to pay off in the long run, right? Not in the next 1 week or 2 week. Your measurement of success is multi-year. I would say probably even multi-generational. Yes. Rosemary, right?
Absolutely. And it's true. It's not only take the time, it's YOLO, you only live once, right? I went to a conference in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I love it over there. It's great. Well, I went there, and it was a government Parks and Recreation conference. And so I went up to the table and I said, so what am I signed up for? Oh, your secretary signed you up for the benefits of recreation at the university. I said, I want to go to a class. What else have you got? And she said, well, we have whitewater canoeing down the Buffalo River. I'm like, what? I said, oh, I can't do that. I had just had my nails done. And so I'm walking away. She goes, you only live once. And I turned around and I said, "You did not YOLO me." She goes, "Oh, yes, I did." So there I was on the bus with a bunch of other women and some very hefty college guys who were going to help us and some guides down. We're a 2-hour drive on a bus to the Buffalo River. And I thought, we got there and they asked us, how many of you have been canoeing? And everybody is in Parks and Rec. I'm an administrator, so I'm like, let me think. In Cano Park. I went canoeing in Cano Park. And they look at me like they roll their eyes. So I was with a guide. We flipped over 6 times.
Oh my God.
The first time we lifted off this little edge there and we flipped over, and I'll tell the kids, and I got up and I was all freaked out, and I stood up and I hit the canoe with my head and I said, I felt like Rose in the Titanic. And I was so freaked out, and he said, and the guy was funny because he'd say, "Rosemary, old gal, stand up." And the water was low, but it was such an experience. And it was just beautiful, the river. Now, mind you, I had been in the hospital a week before and my husband was so freaked out. But then the guy says, "Get down in the front, old gal. We're going into the rapids." I said, "I'm fine." He says, "Oh, get down." So he says, "Look for rocks. They like to eat canoes." And so I'm down in the front, and we turn. It was a dog leg, and we turn. I looked at those rapids. I said, "Turn back, turn back." He says, "There's no going back, old gal. We gotta go." And so that canoe was like this, and my hair was flowing back. I came back to the hotel. My husband had called me lots of times. I came home, and I said, I was going down that river, 13 miles. I do the the rapids. And he says, "You're bruised all over." I said, "I know. I wish I could keep them." It was an accomplishment for me. And I will tell the kids this story because I want them to understand. You have to, do those things in your life, experience them. When you go to school, you can study abroad. You can go to Italy. You can go to Spain. You can go all over, but, you only live once.
Yeah, so Rosemary, one of the interesting uses of technology that I've seen to kind of help build those stories for our families and for our communities has been actually a service that my brother and I got for my parents last year. And it's a very interesting online service that you subscribe for the service for 1 year, and they send your parents a question every single week for them to answer. And so they answer these questions online. It's a question about their life, about either a moment in their life, a moment of them either growing up or when they had kids or something around the family. But they could be even customized questions. And the idea is that after they've written the answers to all these questions in a span of probably around 40 to 50 weeks, you get a physical book with all their answers edited, and it comes to the family. And so now it's our way of using the digital world to bring it into the physical world. And so something that we could have for not only our families, but the generations that are to come.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right?
I love that.
Yeah, so we'll need to figure out a way to intersect that. But also, Rosemary, one of the things that when we were doing that little project with my brother, it reminded me of the movie Coco, the Disney movie Coco. Are you familiar with that movie?
Yes, I love it.
And I love the message that it brings to life to a certain extent, which is the stories of our families is what keeps our families not only still with us, but it keeps them alive. Share with us a little bit more about, does your passion on making sure we have those connections with our elders or with our families, something that you grew up with around your families, making sure that we're sharing those stories and that you want to make sure the next generations continue to do that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I tell the story about the masa bowl. And the masa bowl, my great uncle, he worked in a plastics factory, and he made this bowl, and it looks like a gourd, but it's really not very deep, but it's for the masa, for the tamales. And when I was, and my kids and my grandkids all know this story, but I tell the students this so that they can understand how things improve but as we have technology, but always traditions within your family, within our culture. I remember the masa bowl when I was little. I had to be 5. And we were at my grandmother's home, and at that time, I'm aging myself, at that time, there were no freezers to put the tamales in. We had to make them Christmas Eve. And I say we, but I didn't do them. My aunts were there, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, a woman from across the street. I never knew her name except for Lala. So Lala was there. Everybody was there, and they were so my grandfather and Lala and my uncles and my daddy, they were in the living room watching a little black and white TV. They were watching wrestling. And the tias and my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, they were in the dining room making the tamales using the masa bowl. Well, as we grew older and we helped my mother make tamales, my grandmother gave the masa bowl to my mother. My mother knew I liked to make tamales because it was a tradition and it's in their culture. She gave me the masa bowl. So I have the masa bowl now. And so my daughters and my grandchildren, not just my daughters, but my husband too, we all sit around the table and we use the masa bowl. And I tell that to the students. I said, it's about keeping those stories alive and traditions, and it's so important. And when you talk about cocoa, I mean that's it. I mean, all those things that we do that are so important. So put down the phone, put down the iPad, put down the tablet, and do something with your family. Nothing is, I have to keep myself from saying something to people when they're in the restaurants and everybody's on their phone. I'm like, enjoy each other's company. We know, tomorrow is promised to no one. So we really do have to keep those stories alive. And like you said, that program that sends the questions to your parents is wonderful. So I think first you need to recognize the human part of it and then incorporate technology to improve that. That's great, but there has to be a balance in the force, right?
And Rosemary, what would be your encouragement now, not only as a mother, but as a grandparent, as you're seeing, this multi-generation of the Hernandez family coming to life and thriving in this 21st century? What would be your encouragement to educators, say, or someone that's connected to the education sector that's probably like, you know what, Rosemary, we see the challenges, I see the challenges, we see the struggles, but what would be your message to them on what would be the hope you see for them over the next 10, 20 years,
For educators?
For educators or for someone or administrators that are in the education segment?
Yeah, I think what happens is along the way they kind of get jaded because they're just dealing with so many issues. And granted, our students, I mean, they had some difficulties before COVID. Then COVID came. And I will tell people, they're not apathetic. They're depressed. They've been isolated. And now we want them to say, oh, it's normal. Everything's normal now. Go back to what you're doing. They're afraid. They have a fear. They've seen family members die. They've seen people struggle. They just don't understand. And so what did they do in isolation? They were on the computer. And so what do? They're still on the computer. They're still on their phones. And what happens there is they're not making the human connection. And in the summit that I talked about earlier, we said, put away your phones and talk to each other. And the evaluations that I received said, I had so much fun today learning about my friends, because we we have this activity that a former friend of ours that I hadn't seen in a long time, it's called the Wild Wild Train. What you do basically is you have the students have two lines facing each other, and they have so many minutes to talk to each other like this. And I tell you where I go to school, what's my favorite subject, what I'm thinking about majoring in, what college I like to do, what is something that I do for fun. And then we say, okay, now one line, switch to the right. And then they move, and then they talk to the next person. And they're just getting all this information. And it's wonderful. I wish that more people could do Wild Wild Train to learn about people and what they like and, get to know people. It's amazing to me how some people live in a community and they never know their neighbors. That's what I love about where I live is we all know each other. We have a Monday night dinner with all the neighbors, and it's about taking care of each other too.
That reminds me, Rosemary, actually, we got to know our neighbors actually because of COVID. It was in that area of isolation that I would say we became aware of really how already isolated we were in our own neighborhood. That it was because we were just going to the office, going to the kids' activities, going to somewhere else, and then we would come back home and park the car in the garage, close the garage, and then move on with the next activity we had. It wasn't until all that stopped and we had to just be in our backyard. If we had the privilege of having a backyard, which we talked in one of the previous episodes with another guest, it was that moment in those few months that we're like, you know what? I don't think we know our neighbors as well as we thought we did. And it was those moments that now we actually have a movie night every other week with the kids and the families. We got to meet everyone. But again, we recognize that that's a very unique privilege in our community sometimes, that you have those moments that you could stay or pause. With that said, Rosemary, too, if you were to have an opportunity to speak to the Secretary of Education of this country, what would be your encouragement to him or to her on what could be done differently for the 21st century?
Wow. That's huge, Eric. There's just so many things that I look at, now I live in New Mexico because I wanted to be a better grandmother, a more present grandmother. But in Albuquerque, there's one school district for K through 12, over 85 schools. That's just too much. It's not personalized. Here in Phoenix, in Greater Phoenix area, there's so many districts, and there's always issues with funding. And people might not like what I have to say about this, but there are too many districts. And the money that is spent up at the higher level could be spread to all students. And that's the other issue I have, is that you have different communities that have more in their schools because of where they live and because of the taxes they pay. We need to spread that for all students, because Maryvale is one of the most impoverished communities in the country. And from that community, we have helped students become PhDs, neurosurgeon, dentists. They come from nothing. And I have a student right now who I'm so honored. We went to his graduation at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and he's a captain, and he's a captain in the Space Force.
Wow.
And he is taking care of us right now. He is monitoring the airspace. I met the vice president of Boeing in D.C., and we were talking about possibility of nuclear war, and he grabs my hand and says, "Don't you worry. We have people in Colorado Springs who are monitoring the airspace right now." And so I grabbed his hand. I said, "I know. That's my student." That's the possibilities. If you only give students voice, attention, you're really concerned. But educators have so much on their plates. They have so much on their plates to all these issues. And they're thinking, oh, why can't the parents be more involved? Parents are working 2-3 jobs to just pay the mortgage or rent or putting food on the table. So there's so many issues, right? Children, the only meals they eat sometimes are the ones they get at school. So if you reduce the time they're in school, you're reducing the food that they get to eat. There is so much that we need to do in the area of education. And yes, it needs funding. And yes, they need to pay attention to staff who have scathingly brilliant ideas. And yes, we need to treat all educators equally. You know, administrator and educational assistant or paraprofessional, we're all in this together. So when, I'm reminded of that movie, Remember the Titans. There's an Aguila must, and you have 2 football players. They're like this, the tension, because one is African American and one is Caucasian, and they're out on a camp, and the Caucasian one, he's the captain, and he's yelling at the African American player. He's saying, "What's the matter with you? Why didn't you guard him? Why didn't you guard him? We're a team. Why didn't you do that?" He says, "You got to change your attitude." And the African American football player says to him, "Attitude starts with leadership." And it's true. If we have people in leadership positions in education, no matter if it's the principal, the superintendent, the U.S. Department of Education, the secretary, it's leadership. Attitude reflects leadership. And we're all in this together. No one is better than another. We're all human beings, and we need to treat each other that way. Because you know who's watching us? Little ones. They're watching.
Yeah. Rosemary, when it comes to Aguila, the organization, you guys are doing a little bit of everything to serve the students. Can you share with us a little bit more about details about the program and the work that you get to do in a daily basis and a monthly basis with the students?
So the difference in Aguila as a college prep program is that we believe in a holistic approach, and that is tending to their minds and their hearts and wanting them to be engaged in a community. If they're doing social service type of work, that's wonderful. If they're in business, even if they're on Wall Street, write the check, but be involved and do something to make the world a better place. So we started with the high school component, 9 through 12. And then we saw that let's get them ready for high school. And that was actually one of our students came to me, and he was a teacher in 8th grade. And he said, "Ms. H, we can't talk to them about college. They don't know anything about high school. We got to get them ready for high school so they can get into college." That young man went to Gonzaga, then went to, in New York, he went to school in Columbia, got his master's. He is the legislative assistant to Senator Chuck Schumer on education.
Wow.
This is one of my students. I'm so proud of him. But we have an 8th grade program, the Academy, and we're in school districts, but we know that there's other students who can't participate in that because they're not in that school district. So we're developing the Saturday academies so that any student can be. And I want to make sure that people understand we are not that low-income, underserved program. We serve anybody who wants to participate. And, studies show that we should be in the 5th grade talking about college.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we're in 7th and 8th, but I'm not ready to go 5th. But I do need facilitators. I do need volunteers. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Rosemary, with that said, that all sounds exciting, inspiring. Like I said, 14 years ago, I had a chance to connect with you, and your work has been, and the Aguila's work has been an inspiration for me. Seeing the Aguila alumni today, not only graduating from college, but being leaders in our communities, not only here in Arizona, but all over the country, is just a testament to that seed that you just started planting early on, but that now you're leaving a legacy for all of us to continue not only be inspired on, but to be engaged with. So with our audience that's watching this today or listening to this today, what is your call to action for them to get involved tomorrow with Aguila? And what are certain things that y'all are doing that they could reach out and get engaged with in the next few weeks or months?
You know, there's a video I told you about Tom Pelota, who says the way that we think about charities is all wrong. We really do need to invest in our future. So yes, I need volunteers. Yes, I need facilitators, but I also need funding. We're a nonprofit. That means we don't make money, and I certainly don't make money. I'm not getting rich here, but there's nothing better than the compensation of seeing that privilege of witnessing transformation in students. So yes, we need funding, we need support. Here in Arizona, there was a wonderful opportunity to do your Arizona tax credit. You can still do that, and they've raised that. So that's one area where, and having a monthly donor, even $10 a month, you won't see that, but you'll still be able to deduct that on your taxes and help students out. And the other thing is we have special events, and April is full for sure. April brings us our return of our golf tournament at the Legacy Golf Resort, and that's going to be awesome. And it's to honor me. It's called the Chancla Open. Oh, wow. Because the chancla is the flip-flop, and people say, do you really hit the kids with a flip-flop? I said, no, it's a loving and endearing threat. Apply for that scholarship, apply for that scholarship. And growing up, the chancla is something that we know in a Hispanic culture. And then that's April 7th, and they can go to our website, aguilayouth.org. And then April 19th, we're having the return of our gala, which is really exciting. And that we're going to honor some people. It's called Devotion. And people who are devoted. And one of them is Professor Charles Galleros, who began our law program, Dr. Mandy Oladine, our health program, Dr. Monty Fuse, who volunteers his time to help students with ACT, SAT, and then Judy Reno of College Depot, who's been a great partner with us. So we're having that event, and I neglected to say that at the golf tournament, we have some guests, honorary guests. Those are David and Danny Diaz. They are the real life runners in McFarland, USA, and they're so much fun, and they are official Aguila Men of Honor. They'll do anything for us. They will be returning in December for our first 5K. Wonderful. Which is bringing community together to provide community with resources, information. We'll have community fair, health fair, and a 5K that people can participate in. We're super excited, and again, sending messages of getting that vitamin N in your lives, the nature, getting out, being community, being good to each other. And together we grow together with an education of our mind and heart.
Rosemary, thank you so much for spending time with me today and with our audience as well. You continue to be an inspiration. And again, to learn more, aguilayouth.org. And again, we'll leave with that, the mind and the heart. That's what this work is about. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for your time.